vai con la...
Ma no, guarda, questo mi muovi solo l'altro.
Io spegnerei, vai con la freccetta.
Ma tanto ce n'è solo una, fallo tu a un certo
Ok.
punto.
Aspetto 2 minuti
Sì, sì.
giusto per aspettare se viene Francesca. Vediamo che li fuori. Okay, let's begin. It's a pleasure here to introduce you Valeria Cavalloro and Virginia Giustetto with Atlante Calvino, letteratura e visualizzazione. They come from Geneva and we have been looking forward to seeing them since almost 2 weeks. I want to thank them, and especially Francesca Serra, who was obliged to remain in Geneva because of her many duties and institutional duties. But I would like to introduce Valeria Cavalloro and Virginia Giustetto, who are connected with their project and will introduce us for almost 45 minutes, more or less, and then we can ask them all you want to know on Atlante Calvino project. Valeria Cavalloro have been studying in University of Siena for many years, and she graduated in 2017. She's a postdoc researcher at the University of Geneva. She's working on this project. This project has been funded by FNS. Probably you can explain us something related to this fund. She is also the editor of Allegoria, a journal, and L'Ospite Ingrato Online, and she's the member of the International Lecture of Comparative Humanities, coordinated by University of Princeton. And she is interested in novel theory, in history of literary journal, and modern and contemporary Russian and Italian literature, and she has already published 2 books. First, 2014, Leggere Storie, an introduction to the analysis of the narrative text. I suggest you to read if you are interested in the theory of literature. And study of the novels of Tolstoy, 2016. Virginia Giustetto graduated from the University of Turin in 2016. And she studied contemporary Italian literature, and she currently a PhD in the University of Geneva, and she's been working for 2 years. 1 year, 2 years on Calvino's project, 2 years, it's your second year. Literature and visualization. She is a collaborator of Indice, l'Indice dei Libri del Mese, and she is working also with the publishing houses Bollati, Boringhieri. But in 2014, she obtained a 2 years diploma in writing and storytelling at Holden School, La Scuola Holden, Turin, Holden School. Thank you for coming here, and I would like to ask you many things, but after your lecture, and Francesca Tomasi welcome you on behalf of the coordinator of the Digital Humanities and Digital Knowledge course, and have a nice lecture, and thank you a lot.
So first of all, thanks for inviting us. It's really a pleasure to be here in front of some digital humanities students. I will briefly introduce our project, and then my colleague Valeria will be a little bit more detailed. So the name of our project, as you can see, is Atlante Calvino, Letteratura e Visualizzazione, which means Calvino's Atlas, Literature and Visualization. Italo Calvino has been one of the most important Italian authors of 20th century, and our starting idea was to take a famous author such as Italo Calvino and try to do an experiment that moved away from the traditional form of criticism, for which we take a text and usually we describe or interpret on a written form. In fact, the aim of our project is to conduct a series of in-depth researches on Italo Calvino's work through the field of digital humanities, and most of all through the instrument of data visualization and explorations made available by the digital technologies. Who works at this project? There are two teams, two equipes, we could say with different soul. There are some literature critics and some informational designers. The first group, so the literary critics, work in Geneva, at University of Geneva, inside the Department de Langue et Littérature Roman, while the second group, also known as density design, works inside the Polytechnic of Milan and is specialized in visual representations of, we could say, complex phenomena, urban phenomena, social, historical phenomena. It's very important to bear in mind the fact that that the literary critics at the very beginning weren't digital humanists, are not digital humanists, and it was a conscious choice we took at the beginning, and that's why we actually relied on the density design. But at the same time, it is very important to note that the density design has never worked before on an entire literary corpus, and in general is not specialized on literary works. So both these aspects highlight the experimental nature of the project, and it is something I think very important to understand the project. What about our arrival point? For these reasons, it is quite difficult to predict the arrival point of our project, because you know, we can have some, we can imagine some outcomes. For example, we are sure we're gonna create a web platform on which we will put all our visualization, but it's very difficult to know, to define the final result. This is another element of novelty, since quite almost all the literary works are born with well-defined goals, well-defined objectives. So for example, if we think about if I want to create a critical and commented edition of a work, I know I know very well which form my project will have. For us, it is a little bit difficult. It is a little bit different and a little bit more complicated. Then I just want to tell you a few information about the schedule. Our project lasts 3 years. As Paola Italia told before, it is financed by the National Swiss Fund, SNS, and we started in September 2017, and it will finish in September 2020. So we are actually in the third and last year. It's important to note that the first, I think, 6 months of the project, it was necessary a period of acclimatization, we could say, because the languages of the two teams are very different, and the way we use our languages is very different, and so it was very important to learn the languages of each other. Right now we are in the third and last year, and so I will, Valeria Cavalloro will tell you what we have done so far.
Well, thank you for having us. And as Virginia was saying, our project was born with a very ambitious goal, which is to conduct an extended array of literary surveys on Italo Calvino's narrative work. And by using both the traditional instruments of text analysis and literary criticism and the relatively new tools of data visualization and information design. And when I say that we aim to an extended array of surveys, I mean it in multiple levels. As you can guess, probably by the very title of our project, Atlas, our main goal is to achieve a sort of complete layout of all Calvino's narrative work, which involved both quite an extension in the time span, because we have to deal with an author that produced literary narrative works over almost 43 years with no interruption. And also there is an extension in the borders of the genre that we have to deal with. So when we aim to this sort of complete layout as our first step, we needed to make sure that our corpus was as complete as it could possibly be. And this meant, for example, that we have to conduct in-depth research of his earliest work. For example, his short stories for 1943. This is way before his first recognized and let's say more famous works, such as the Path of the Spider's Net, which is 1947. And also this demanded us to conduct a rigorous scrutiny of all the text that presented ambiguous formal connotation. For example, we have a series of pieces that he wrote for a friend of his that were painters or artists, and these short pieces with almost no plot or narrative development was expressively conceived to accompany paintings or artwork during expositions or for occasions that have nothing to do with a classic literary, let's say, framework. So we have this very large and diverse corpus to deal with. And if we just try to translate it, this corpus into numbers, we ended up having 23 volumes. I'm just talking about narrative volumes, not including essays, autobiographies, interviews, letters, nothing of that, just narrative volumes, 23. Signed by Italo Calvino between the 1947 and the 1984, which is the year of his last book, which is All the New Cosmicomics, the last installment of his science fiction series of short stories. And besides these volumes, we have a total of 206 short stories, which were partially included and collected in volumes themselves and partially just released individually. And just for the sake of conveying a slight idea of the variety that we have to confront, we had to work on one-page narrative fragments right after having worked on 300-page long novels, and set up our literary inquiry in such a way that it could stand consistently both for experimental novel like If a Winter Night, a Traveler, which is an experimental novel inspired by the modular poetics of the Oulipo, the French group that came out with the idea of a modular, almost automated literary creation. But our research setting needed to be valid as well for totally different works. For example, fairy tale-like short stories like the series of Marco Valdo, or more gloomy, realistic pieces like The Watcher, or again, pseudo-autobiographic stories like the ones inspired by the partisan experience of Calvino's, or his family relationship and his relationship in general with the social context of this native region, the Liguria. And just think about this. When we tried to organize by genre just the volumes, just the 23 volumes, we couldn't size down our scheme to less than 6 different categories for 23 volumes alone, which is a sort of proof of the diversity and discontinuity that we met in the systematization of our corpus. So since we have this situation to deal with, we realized that we couldn't dive straight into the text analysis. And instead, we took almost our whole first year of work as a sort of preparatory stage and sort of general briefing, during which we managed to accomplish two main crucial missions, which were to give us time to really get to know the corpus itself in every details. For example, taking all the decisions about the points of ambiguity or uncertainty that could become problems later on, and rest assured that they weren't easy decisions sometimes. We struggle a lot on establishing what genre was the most accurate to become the main categories under which to incorporate a piece, sometimes very, very ambiguous one. And the other mission was to become familiar with the tools of data visualization, and most of all with the process of translating our traditional way of developing literary knowledge into representable data, which means for us a difficult bridge between what we conceive as quality information and what actually is quantitative information based on numbers that a machine and a program, a software can work for us. And this first year also produced a sort of positive side effect, which was for the two equipe, the humanist equipe and the designers, to get to know each other very well, which allowed us to develop an efficient workflow, which wasn't an easy thing at first. But above all, this first stage has brought us to the completion of 3 different orientation visualization, what we have called orientation visualization, that are devoted solely to mapping the corpus and exploring the potentialities of our graphic tools that we were meeting for the first time. So we have these 3 initial visualization, still before the actual test analysis part of the project. The first one was titled Time and Works. As you can see, probably, I hope, it's quite fine. This was an experiment on how we could give visual interest to a representation of something that is inherently monodimensional as a timeline, and not even a timeline of all the events of Calvino's life, but just of his published volumes and his newspapers collaborations. So we came out with the idea of a winding line, a spiraling line, in which each turn of the line signals the passage from a decade to the next. And, and as you can see, the line passes through the little circles that we called glyphs, almost like they were the pearl of a necklace, the beads of a necklace. And since these glyphs, these symbols, as you can see, differ in color and shape according to the main literary form or categories or genre that we managed to identify. Yes.
I think that they can't almost see directly because it's in a very short character. So if you wanted to skip to the online version, you can directly see on your video. So you can go, if you provide the link Atlante, Calvino, Serra, Geneva, you can Google, and you can easily go directly to the link because if not, it's impossible for you to see because it's actually so small.
It's actually easier to go. Okay.
And you
Did you
go
find?
to the first visualization
Yeah.
of the word time and works.
Yeah.
Time and works. So you can explain and
Do they have access?
because every one of them has on their screen directly internet.
Okay, so you maybe it's even easier if you go to the.
You can go on your
Okay.
or on your PHP.
Because we have an interactive version of this on the Corriere, on the online page of the Corriere.
Yeah, you can check on La
But
Lettura.
I have seen it directly in the online version of your site.
Also, sì, rimanda
Yes.
poi a questo.
Visual data.
Sì, la
Yes.
lettura.
Okay. This is the online and interactive version. If you click on here,
No lo so.
okay. Did you manage? So it could be easier for you. If not, you don't see anything because
Okay.
So you can go there and you can follow the.
You can both get the link to the interactive version on the web page of the newspaper The Corriere, or just from the same link on the same page of our site. You can find
Go here.
a high resolution PDF version of what you see or what you were seeing there. That was actually quite fine, so I can Again, we have basically the concept of a spiraling line, which is a timeline, a literal timeline. You can see the progression of the years from a decade to the other. And this line passes through these little circles which that are different in colors and in the little shapes, in the little symbols that they contain inside, and they signals the different categories and some sort of genre categorization and grouping that we managed to identify. And this visualization highlights not just the time sequence of Calvino's published work, but also the highlights the shifting of his writing preferences from a decade to another, and stands as a synthesis of his, let's say, artistic evolution, its artistic progression. And in addition to this, I hope you can see, the timeline is enhanced by two more elements, which are the clusters of little dots that you can see around some parts of this line that represent the duration of Calvino's main collaborations with national newspapers, La Repubblica, Il Corriere, and again, you can see there are little text blocks that collect what we deem were relevant background information about each decade in order to give a more complete understanding of what we are seeing, what was going on when Calvino made his artistic choices, when he decided to use a classic novel as its main form or a short story collection. So this was our very first result, and also the first occasion in which we have the chance to actually face the challenges of translating our view, our habits also, into something completely different. A totally different route we took with the second one of this orientation visualization that we titled The Flows of the Stories, which goes along some sort of a philological approach, let's say. The pool of Calvino's short stories is not only remarkable in extension, as we were saying, more than 200 single titles, but it's also very complex as far as the publishing history of these texts goes. As a matter of fact, many of them were initially published on journals and newspapers and later collected into volumes. But there are also several cases of texts that appeared on periodic press and were never collected in any volumes, as well as texts, on the other hand, that were specifically written to complete a volumes that Calvino was putting together and were never released individually. And on top of this situation, we also had to take into account a peculiar habit of Calvino when it comes to short stories in particular, that is its obsession, its literal obsession with going back to his previously published stories, dismantling the collection they were originally part of, and rearranging them into new volumes with totally different aesthetic results. So since we have so much to keep organized for our future analysis, we need to develop a quick and as immediate as possible way to track the path of each story through its multiple publications, and this is what you can say here. You see in the central sort of stripes or columns in the interactive version that is vertical.
Excuse me, are you able to see the interactive from your screen? Because, okay, probably with the left screen is not possible. So, better for, okay. Are you able to see?
Okay, perfect.
Also
this screen is not.
Let's probably with another browser.
Prova Firefox.
Your browser is Chrome.
Okay, Chrome. This. This is the default option on Explorer, which, I mean,
You will have to say to your engineer.
yes, to optimize for whoever. Yes, this is the Corriere della Sera page, so it's not our fault. But I mean, whoever is still using Explorer as browser also deserve to be able to see this. Anyway, you can see. No. So you can see this. This is the interactive version of what we briefly showed in its horizontal, just image, still image version. You can see in the central columns we have all, I mean all 206 short stories signed by Calvino from 1943 to 1985. So we are talking 43 years consecutively. And they are rigorously ordered by chronological succession. And we chose to take into account just the date of their first publication. And you can see on the left side, we have the periodic press, both newspaper, journals, various kinds of review, including, for example, Playboy. And on the right side, I hope it's the right for you as well. Yes, we have came out with this solution. You see sideways each colored bar or line signals a volume, and the little squiggly lines that goes through the titles, the column of titles, and through one of more colored lines, they are literally the exact representation of the path of each single story through various phases of publication and republication. And so you can see that with this quite intuitive and simple visualization, we managed to establish a useful maps. We actually use it all the time to keep track of when short stories firstly appeared, in which collection, in which volumes it reappeared, and how many times it was literally recycled by Calvino, sometimes in totally different occasions, so with a significant change in this, let's say, in hermeneutic possibilities also. No, we briefly took into consideration the possibility to represent somehow when a modification in the title or in the text happened somewhere down the road of a short story from a collection to the next. But it was really too... No, it just lists once with this original title, the title that he had when it firstly appeared. Yes, because for example, in the collection Ultimo viene il coro, yes,
we see many texts coming from the previous
sure.
reviews, and then turning into I racconti.
Yes. We have a few occasions.
Only one changed the title. We know the context
it's the first one. We linked our choice about which title to elect to our choice to go in chronological order by the date of their first appearance. So when they first, for example, I Fratelli Bagnasco, up there, I Fratelli Bagnasco presents a change of the title, but this change happened in the passage to the I Racconti in 1958. So since we chose to put I Fratelli Bagnasco up there in 1946, we couldn't. Yes. It could be the other way around. Yes.
Actually, in Calvino, it happens 2 or maybe 3 times.
Yes, I think 3 times.
3 times.
More than 200 titles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. As if I recall correctly, that was I Fratelli Bagnasco, L'inseguimento, which becomes no, il guidatore notturno. It doesn't change almost a word. The retouching on the text, it's very sparse on Calvino. So we yes. As far as we know, when a title changes, it's by Calvino's will. He's the one who decides to change his original title, and sometimes this is a consequence of this recycling habit that he has. The case of the Guidatore Notturno, that becomes the avventura di un automobilista, when Calvino republished his original piece from 1967 into the volumes Gli Amori Difficili. So this is a volume where all the titles are Le avventure di, the adventure of. So he wanted to include this piece, Il Guidatore Notturno, and he changes the title in order to make it fit with the others in this new collection. So you have to know that the title is different, because if you know the title according to the latest, if you yes. You have to remember. Yes, of course. If you know for example, the collection Amori Difficili by this index, if you have the volumes, and you go looking for the single stories in this visualization, you can find that one of them is missing. It's actually because it has a different title when it first appeared. But this was a choice. Another question, just to answer to all the question related to this specific. The name is the path, no? the time of the works. Mm-hmm. This is the flows of the stories. Yeah. we so let's take a step back. I didn't mention this thing. The base of our corpus was the edition of the Meridiani, the Mondadori, let's say, main edition of all Calvino's work, 3 volumes of just the narrative work. At the end of each volumes, there is an apparatus of eventual variants when they were be found, and sometimes the history of manuscripts, but most of them are missing, unfortunately, especially the oldest one. So we, at the beginning, we checked all the apparatus, looking for every sort of significant, at least, modification in the text. And one of our original data set at the base of this visualization included our whole columns of notes about title changed or little.
There isn't in a print form a bibliography, a primary bibliography of Italo Calvino.
Yes.
Bibliography, a list of all he has published in a review and the connection between one title with the other.
We have a general bibliography of all Calvino's work. Yes, it was the volumes.
In the Meridiani's collection, we have
No. Some sort of there is in the Meridiani as well, but the bibliography in the Meridiani is not complete 100%. The most complete version that we could find is the volumes by Luca Baranelli, which is 300 volumes of just bibliography by Calvino, including all the republication, both on reviews and yes.
Thanks to Luca Baranelli.
Yes,
we know every title and
yes.
every source and every volume where the title has been
Yes.
published in the
If
first
you
time and second. So, okay.
if you check this volume by Luca Baranelli, you can find in each index.
Your presentation. I didn't want to stop you, but just
But this is actually the main reason of interest of all this visualization, because we were interested too in seeing the path of each short stories going through different publications, different volumes, and we would have liked to include also this sort of more detailed information about the text, but that would have transformed this visualization into a literal mess. It was hard to read, almost impossible to make a distinction between title change or text change, or where a single word was. So.
I only thought on the title and the structure and the main structure of the index of the volumes and their sources and all the volumes in there were published in the second round. Okay. Thank you a lot.
I will go quickly on this third one, because this is an experiment almost where we branched out of our corpus, because in order to test a completely different tool, we used some sort of pre-made data set, which is the index of the names of the collected essays of Calvino, also by in the Meridiani collection. And this time we didn't have a handcrafted visualization, but an automatic result produced by the software Gephi, which some of you may know.
Yes, not for the students, but previous year for one of the students probably there. Tiziana Mancinelli was here, and she had a very interesting workshop on Gephi, and she explained how it works and all the possibilities to use the software.
Yes.
You can probably explain, because if they don't know anything about
Okay, we just feed this software a data set that just included every name, how many times it was present in all the essays, and some information, for example, the page number of each mention. And the algorithm for SATLAS2 made the work for us and produced this network in which you can see that each dot. We don't still we don't. Yes, we don't have it yet.
You can find.
Yes,
yeah, from
sure.
our side, this one.
So basically, you can see that each dot signals a name. Yes, signals a name, and the dimension correspond to how many times this person is mentioned by Calvino, and the relative distance of each couple of dots is established according to the page distance of that mention, and they are especially close if these persons are named in the same essay and more times together. So this is basically it. It was an experiment to spread out of our corpus and our basic process of having handcrafted visualization. And this tree visualization basically allowed us to assess our toolbox, and thanks to the Corriere also to gain a feedback from a general and more wider audience than the purely academic one, because of course we had some feedback by almost occasional readers or some of them. Sort of book club reading group wrote us about finding this visualization on the publication by Corriere. But this took almost entirely our first year of work. Entering the second year of work, we were finally ready to tackle the actual text analysis, which involved the exploration of three separate but intertwined research spheres, or itinerary as we call them. They were the doubt, the act of doubting in the narration, the space and the value of the places, the representation of the space, and the form, especially as far as the plot and the implotment structures goes. Each pass was assigned to one member of the literary team and developed individually, but we managed to keep a strict overall consistency among our researches by giving ourselves a common methodological structure that define our order of operation in quite a strict way. This structure was based on three progressive steps: a general survey of the text, looking for the phenomenological, let's say, level, which is to say the level of literal textual symptoms that stand as the first visible trace of the problems that we were investigating. Then a second level of the exploration of artistic processes that can be identified as the engine underlying this phenomena, together with other overall characteristics of the text. And finally, a third level of the more theoretical problems that we can link to these first two levels of exploration that lay at the roots of Calvino's artistic behavior overall. So while we were working on different problems by ourselves, we made sure to stay all on the same page by keeping synchronized our progression from the most immediate some sort of superficial, in a sense, level of textual exploration, all the way down to the deepest and most debatable plane of hermeneutic hypothesis. And maybe the most interesting and experimental aspects of all this process was that we were involved into what we could call the, analogical data mining, which means that we, each of us, proceed to read through each and every text by Calvino and manually selecting and registering all the phenomena that we were encountering by this tool that was developed by our colleagues at the Politecnico, specifically for our use. We can give you a brief demonstration of the... No, a plain TXT text that was extracted by the PDF version that Mondadori gave us.
So the system converts from PDF to TXT?
Yes. It was... Yes. Even if
Extract the data without having been previously marked up.
Yeah, they
yes,
created
exactly.
it for us.
This was designed for
By
us.
them, yeah.
You can see the text, and
So you upload the text.
we upload the text.
Each text, just one.
Yes. We have a library.
TXT is the extension. So
Yes.
it's a plain
It's a plain TXT text, and then we upload a TSV file. It's a structure of data, which upload a series of options, basically, specifically designed for each of our research itinerary. This was my first level of text exploration was about the presence of lists. And this just basically works by, so you select whatever segment of the text, it recognizes the position of the segment by character number. You can connect it to give it a tag, also write a note. And then you can choose a tag from a limited list. The note is just whatever you want. Whatever we want to write that was not...
something like to put a yellow
Yep.
pen and to write a note on the border.
It could be literally whatever.
Similar.
Yes, sure. This was just because that was necessary for mine exploration. For example, she had a lot more option in the tag window.
Different categories and different
You
tags.
are working on
Different.
two different
Three.
kind of
Yes.
three.
Yes,
Three.
we are three, and we are working on three different spheres or researches. And so the Explorer, this tool, was projected in three different ways.
Each of us was given a different TSV file, a different structure, and even if the main tool is the same for all of us, in the moment when we upload the structure, the option here on the side become personalized.
Yeah.
So
In order to change your annotation, but if your annotation are not based on a similar lexicon, how can you extract data then in the second phase of your work?
there is an
When you will collect your annotation and you will share information in order to deal with them and in order to make them connected.
this came in a second moment. For now, you can see you can export.
TSV.
All your annotation.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Annotation means typology
okay.
or note?
Both.
Both.
You what you have. I don't. There is no. Really. Okay,
So
it's not okay.
annotation and you can see all of them
Yes.
in an Excel file.
Yes, exactly.
And then how
And
do
this
you
Excel
match your annotation together?
this Excel file is the base of it's what we give to our colleagues of the Politecnico, which use it as a base for what follows. That is the landscape, what we call the landscape. Right.
So they take your Excel file. They will have just to explain because it's not that simple and try and explain for
Yes.
the students and also for me. They will have three Excel files.
Yes.
Three main, three big Excel files, and they will match.
Even before, we have several hundreds Excel files that when each of us merge into a single data set, so we give them 3 data sets just for the first stage of the text analysis. But since we had the same method frame for this research, that is, select a part of a segment of the text with an annotation, a tag, all our 3 datasets were had the same structure basically. So they
Okay. Now it's really clear.
okay.
But you will share among these 3 different data sets only typology, that is not the quality but the quantity of what you have decided to extract, because you have phrase, you have syntax, you have single words, or you have
This is what I had. She had some totally different typologies. What we have?
There isn't a common.
No.
And how can they match your?
They can, because what we have in common is the present. If you figure an Excel, how is made an Excel, just an Excel file, common Excel file. What we have in common is the presence of the column typology. Column. We just have like, sorry. I will show you by using a blank. we have something like. We have basically this in common: a first column with the ID of the single of every text. The finding that each of us. This is the text segment that we selected back in the just the ID of the text, the txt file.
Okay. So the source file.
Yes.
Every source file has an ID. So in the first column you have an ID.
Then we have the. Okay. You can. I don't think you can see that. But basically there is the first, well, let's say the initial character number of the segment, the final
incipit and explicit.
character of the segment, of each single segment. For each text there could be tens of entries, which each of them a single initial point and a final point that help us position this segment in the length of the text, and then a typology.
So it's on typology that I was thinking, because you don't share the typology of text, because you
No.
have a typology and you have another one.
Yes.
So how can they match your result analysis?
They could match it because
But they only in the last part of your project they will show us how can you have said differently from different points of view related to one single word or one single sentence. So
yes.
Just to say, having 3 level of annotation, 3 level of notes.
They could merge.
In an analogic form, we can think that
we can go straight to the actual result of this. This is the first attempt to visualize the entire corpus. This is not just short stories or just the volumes. This is all of it. And we choose this sort of, don't mind the title. It was an old one. It will be modified back to its original title, that is The Landscape. And you can see each text is translated into the shape of a sort of mountain or a hill, and the size of every single text is matches the length by character number, and the disposition is established according to the chronological proximity, starting from the light orange one that are the earliest, all around to the dark gray ones that are the latest short stories. And also you can see the little borders around some groups of these shapes that signals the collections. So you can see which one of these little mountains are or have been briefly or part of the same collection, the same volumes. So what happens here is that for the first time we had back-to-back the results of all our three first round of analysis. We applied a series of filters, or the search filters. The users will be able to activate whatever filters he prefers. And since we have in common this blank structure of identifying a phenomenon in the text by character number, by character position, and identifying it with a tag, we have a common language to apply all three analyses to the same base geography, in a way. So this is just the first layer of the research. This is the four colors, yellow, green, red, blue. They represent the four categories that I had.
The typologies
the four typologies that the four tags that I could select when I was highlighting a segment of text. But this is just mine. Okay. And you can switch to one of us to the other, changing the filter, the research filter.
So let's come back to,
for example, this is this is Earth. As you can see, it's the same visual language, but of course,
but is there somewhat a list of categories you have used, like an ontology of categories, just to understand
there will be
categories, just to understand which were the level to stress on text?
There will be both in-depth legenda all around the visualization, and also single pages or parts of the final web platform where we described in details our method and the process step by step that brought us to these results.
So four level, realism sphere.
These are old names actually, but this is her work, and this, if you want.
Yes, each color here represents the different categories of settings. So here you can have the list. So, for example, imaginary settings are the pink ones.
Within the realism sphere.
Yes.
We are always in the realism sphere.
Yes.
we will. We, we are the realism sphere is one of our three. We have the realism that was the one connected to the space analysis, to the analysis of places, the representation of places and settings, and the formal spheres that was mine related to plot construction devices used by Calvino, and then the doubt sphere. Yes. That is, for example, fog, erasing, disparition, all this kind of phenomenon that he wrote.
You have previously decided that the dark sphere is represented by fog and not, for example, by phantoms.
Yes.
Okay. So it's an ontology you have decided previously in your.
Yes, there are some choices we took at the beginning. Yeah.
Because, for example, for some other
Authors.
the sphere of the dark may be represented by shadows,
Sure.
or not only fog, but humidity, or I don't know, the dark, or mirrors. Because the sphere of the dark may be the Cavalloro itself.
Yes.
An example. Okay.
This, the situation is that this is the raw result that we are just throwing in your face like so, but this will be part of a web platform which a multi-layered presentation and introduction to what we are going to see, what every user will go to see. So we have also
private link. That
yes,
we
this
use.
is just ours. It's not public yet. So this is yes.
It's
Not so easy.
easy to understand, especially your workflow, because for you it's everything
Yes, sure.
clear, and for us it's something different. Is it possible for a single reader just to decide other categories and to use some tools to introduce in this text something like a parallel analysis? You have managed just something to make more interactive readings of the text, or something like
Yes. There is a margin of interactivity, but not yet, at least, on that level, because in order to apply these findings to that scheme, that sort of stylized geographic space, there is a manual work behind that must be done. There is no automatic results to that. Maybe we would like, yes, we would like.
Not only read, only also act. For example, here you can choose what to see, and you can get some different outcomes. Here there are all the settings. Each small circle represents a setting, and there are a lot of settings, and the big ones contains other settings. And you can choose what to see, and you can, now we have the visualization, but you can interpret it in a different ways, and you can use it. There are a lot of different interpretations you can get, and so I think also another person could get some different outcomes from the same visualizations. So you can act with it.
Let's say for due completion that there is also a gateway that prevents us from doing this, which is we cannot share the text. The TXT files are absolutely under copyright restriction, so we will share our dataset. So a very, very smart and devoted reader or user can download our datasets, provide itself TXT text in way that we don't want to know, legal ways, and then recreate in order to make the Explorer tools useful. Yes, it needs to have a TXT from a TXT file. So let's say that I am not one of us. If I really, really love Calvino, I'm totally into Calvino's narrative work, I may be writing a thesis about Calvino, I could have a TXT file of one of his work, let's say a TXT file of the Baron in the Tree. I can download one of our dataset, understanding how it was constructed, then upload my own TXT file that I have as a scholar on the Explorer and recreate a similar dataset. But it couldn't come from us.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
But the reader should provide by himself or herself a TXT.
Yes.
The only way is to type.
Or you can have a ebook and carefully copy it. You can. Well, or you sign either you sign a contract with Mondadori with a non-disclosure. Yes.
We can see also tomorrow with who is making a project on Samuel Beckett.
Oh,
The same problem.
wait, there is a way around it. That is, if you are not into Calvino, but if you are into, let's say, Voltaire, that is free text, because you can find it just on Liber and
We are always dealing with the text under copyright or text not on copyright. So this is a really big problem. So we can see from your project and the Dirk Van Ulle project, which will be explained tomorrow, the different ways to solve this problem. Because he, I can say, decided to explain and to show to the reader only a sample of single text, and
Yes.
he was allowed, but he will explain to us tomorrow, just to share only one text and just to show. And then you have to pay to go inside the project, and if you pay, you can see all the text, but if you don't pay, you can see only one sample. But this is another way to solve a very big problem.
Yes, and it was a problem for ourselves too, because we had other options of tools and softwares that we could have maybe possibly used, but we couldn't because they required that we upload our texts on external servers that was totally forbidden by Mondadori. So of course we wouldn't go to jail in order to
So it's really interesting. Okay?
but
You're finished? Sounds like more.
but that was let's say the main achievement that we are at right now. We are just into our third year, and we are finalizing the second stage, that one devoted to the analysis of the processes that are underlying the phenomena in Calvino's text. What she was showing to you, the visualization the interactive visualization, this is one of the first, almost complete, we can say, results of the second stage. You can see this is completely different from the landscape, where you just have a selection of filters to apply, and there will be a collection of cards with detailed examples of how you can pass from the basic data of the landscape to more in-depth literary consideration, just by observing how we arranged the data, even if it was the most clever way that we could find to make this visualization the most interactive possible, not sharing the text that we couldn't find. Yes. Anyway, the landscape will be the doorstep of the web platform that it's quite far from completion, but we have a presentation of what it will end up looking like. And
Just to show the wireframe of the...
yes, you can see the sphere are our 3 research paths and the 3 steps of, that articulates every part of our world. And the bussola is just the 3 orientation visualization that we made in order to present the corpus and the timeline of Calvino's work. The landscape that will be the very first introductory stage of the platform. With a search option, of course. Everything that we could include in this visualization that was not the actual text, we tried to include.
These are the 3 analyses on the landscape.
Yes, this is a short. These are the cards with the in-depth example analysis, and then you can go further into more complex analysis. Of course, as each of us of our researches becomes more complex, it's no longer possible to have a common base layer like the landscape, because each of us will need a completely different visual model to translate our findings.
It was possible just in the first step. Then the 3 researchers are quite different.
Yes. This has changed names way too many times.
No, yeah.
This will be the second stage. You can see. So this is basically it. You can see the sort of main structure of 3 research paths and 3 steps for each research. And there is some sort of symmetry that we can take from this model. But of course, the more you go into a specific research problem, a specific question of literary or hermeneutic or theoretical question, the more the visual results diverge, because it requires specific, almost graphic form. Yes, of course, we will have also.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you very much. We are astonished, we are shocked, we are almost shocked. And I would like you to ask some questions if you want to repeat.
Please, yes.
I thank you a lot, and I would like to ask if there is some question, if you wanted to know. Okay, thank you. No, loud.
It's just a clarification about the fact of the feedback and the interactivity with people who visit the web. I didn't understand after
interactivity with all the people who can use this. I had another question more, which is connected. Who is addressed to?
Yes, this is.
You think your reader is a common one, is a scholar one, is an academic one?
We did ask ourselves this very question many times, and at the end, the only answer is it can be anyone, because the levels of the research are progressive and quite independent from one another. So the most occasional reader can just go on the platform and enjoy the visualization of how many times Calvino used the Genova or Sanremo as its main settings. And at the same time, a scholar can be on the platform in the deepest levels of the analysis, wondering how the emplotment strategies affected the choices of, for example, repetitive structure, pattern in the way Calvino intertwined.
So it's not a very common reader, because
the one,
sophisticated way
the one
to
who
make an analysis.
yes, the one who chooses to go all the way down to the deepest level, of course, is quite an informated reader. Yes.
Can you, you can't share the text, but did they allow you to share the single words? For example, concordance. You can extract any single word just to know how many times did he use the word house, even if you didn't mark house because you didn't care about this specific word. But did you no.
They will be able to explore what we have saved as dataset, because in order to make them able to conduct their own research, we should upload the text somewhere into the platform. But we cannot.
Actually, we can share the texts, but Calvino's texts are available on internet, and it's not difficult to find them. It's not legal, but it. No, sure, but no, I know, but it's very easy to find it. So for someone can very easily find it.
You're right, but we have
I know we have.
project
Yeah, sure.
not relying on the
No, sure.
our readers, because if not, we can share
Sure.
and enforce them to make and to behave in an illegal way. But it's something that we don't. No, I was thinking, because sometimes publishing houses don't they don't allow us to share the whole text, but they allow us to read a single word, because you can extract a single word, and this is not against the
They
fact that they want the readers to buy books to make money.
I think that in theory they could allow us to make the user view a single words, but in order to obtain these results, not uploading the text, we should create a dataset with every single word of each single text, and upload that sort of translation of the text into a different form. And
They don't want the
we
reader
the,
to read the
our
whole text
contract
on the screen without paying money.
we have an agreement that prevents us to upload the text in any form, public or private, in any external server or site or platform or background, inaccessible. They don't care. We just cannot put the text into the platform. That was a strict no.
Probably it was something to decide before making the agreement, just because they don't want you to read the plain text. They don't want you to read
I don't know. The, that could very well be just a matter of wording of the contract, because I don't think that they would see any difference in a text that is uploaded in an inaccessible part of the platform. But they just, this is just the phrasing of the contract, so we are bound to this. Just quickly to answer to the question of the interaction, basically we are trying to create the visualization that are more, how can I say, where you can do the most number of things possible, that you can do the more flexible kind of adjustment, but of the results that we could provide. This is why we are literally spending our whole time of literally 99% of our research time is devoted to complete these data sets that are impressive, several hundreds and thousands of lines of data sets. This is in order to bring the major part possible of the text into our data sets, so that the user can somehow reach it, but this is a limit.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, because this is a new method of visualizing an author's entire bibliography and timeline, are you thinking about generalizing this method in order to apply to other authors, if you have any plans on that in the future? That was my question.
Absolutely, yes. One of our main concerns while developing all this visualization, especially the first three, these three orientation, it was to make them as flexible as they can possibly be in order to fit other authors or group of authors. For example, as we were developing this one, The Flows of Stories, we often thought of for example, poets that have collected poems later on their lives, and you can find sometimes the order of the single text has been changed, or something has been erased from a previous collection and is not anymore in the final, or there has been a selection maybe of the text. So you can use this model, adjusting and repurposing in order to fit our other authors, or even maybe possibly not just literary authors, songwriters, or showrunners for TV series. I mean, we tried to make them as neutral as possible, just to be in the hope that someone will take inspiration from these models and reuse them.
Thank you. I really liked your visualization, and I was searching for the technical infrastructures that you use to realize them. I was wondering if your colleagues from the Politecnico build them from scratch, or they use other technologies previously built.
Aside from the one that they produce with the Gephi software package, they refers to a sort of library of models of their own design that is called the raw library, that maybe we can see. Is it completely open source? It's actually going through right now a crowdfunding campaign. You can just have your Excel files of whatever data you want and go on their site, Rograph, and use one of their graphic models. And you can just upload your file into their site and select graphic models that you like, that you think it will be useful, and you will have the results. Of course, it's quite it's literally a raw result. It's not as aesthetically refined as ours, because this is the starting point. If you go just here, you can just
Upload file.
just paste your Excel file, and you will have down there. Yes. You will find just one of these options available to.
They use it also for other projects.
Yes. And they are the base of our visualization.
It wasn't created for Atlante Calvino.
No, it was their.
They don't use this one.
They use it, but also for other projects.
They use, of course, they are the creators of these options of Rograph. So they
invented Rograph.
yes.
Yeah.
So they use a new version.
Yes, they are not using this, but of course they are using the database, the literally database of these graphic tools.
And this is open source.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Really interesting. Really interesting also for you, because you can take suggestions also for.
You can just go right now and play with whatever.
Okay. I think that it's a little late. Some other question of that for curiosities at the end. If not, thank you a lot. Really a lot.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure to hear, and this is a brand new project, inspiring, and we hope to have you again at the end of the project. When you are going to end the project? Within
September 2020.
September 2020, so next year you can come here and
Maybe, why not?
And the web platform will be available.
Anyway, if you want any more information, you can just go on our site, Atlante Calvino, and there are our mail address. You can just write us, whatever.